My name is Elsie or Elizabeth Ratliff. I am a Spanish teacher at Lambert High School, which is in Forsyth County, Georgia. I am also finishing my Instructional Technology Specialist at Kennesaw State University with Dr. Jim Wright and an expected graduation date of December 2017. For my capstone experience, my title is The Importance of Language Lab Speaking Activities in the World Language Classroom. Language labs are amazing technology that exists that allows a teacher to open a program, use a headset, tell her students to sit at stations, also using headsets, and do various activities that are helpful for learning a different language. Some of the activities include listening, so that students hear the listening recording directly in their ears, with some software that allows them to even slow down or pause the listening tracks. But also, they have many great capabilities for speaking activities. Mainly, it lowers their affective filter, which means that they are less nervous because not everyone can hear them speaking in a different language. The other benefit to using language labs for speaking activities is that the teacher can click on different groups of students or individual students if they are doing a recording and listen to what the student is saying. If desired, teachers can also give feedback to that specific student or that student and their group. This is a helpful way to do speaking in world language classrooms. However, when I came to Forsyth County in the fall of 2015, I noticed that my colleagues at Lambert High School did not seem to go to the language lab very often. Though we had 2 language labs at our high school, teachers either avoided the lab or, when they went, they seemed to use the language lab more for listening activities than for speaking. This seemed odd to me since in Gwinnett County, where I worked for 3 years prior to the fall of 2015, teachers used the language lab made by a different company to monitor speaking activities frequently. The same was true for neighboring Fulton County. Thus my interest in my topic. One thing I did notice that was different, other than using a different language lab company that did seem to have more issues with the hardware itself, was that in Forsyth County there was no world language district level coordinator until this past school year, 2016 to 2017. To understand more about the current reality of language lab usage within Forsyth County, and not just at Lambert High School, and what I assumed, I created a survey to send to teachers at the high school level throughout Forsyth County. I chose not to send this to middle or elementary schools since middle and elementary schools in Forsyth County do not have language labs currently. Once I sent the survey to all of the language teachers within Forsyth County, I was excited to see responses. I received a total of 14 responses, and here are some of the results. Of the 5 high schools in Forsyth County, 6 teachers were from Lambert High School, where I currently work. 1 teacher was from West Forsyth High School, 6 teachers were from North Forsyth High School, 1 teacher was from South Forsyth High School, and 0 teachers from Central Forsyth High School responded to the survey. I also wanted to know what level of Spanish each teacher taught. It is important to note that teachers may teach more than one level of Spanish. However, of the 14 teachers, 3 said that they taught Spanish 1, 8 teachers said that they taught Spanish 2, 6 teachers said that they taught Spanish 3, 3 teachers said that they taught Spanish 4, 4 teachers said that they taught AP Spanish Language, 0 teachers taught AP Spanish Literature, 0 teachers taught IB Junior Spanish, and 1 teacher said that they taught IB Senior Spanish. Since each high school has 2 language labs in the building, I wanted to know how often teachers went to the language lab. Of the 5 high schools, all of us have a rotating language lab schedule. For example, my current language lab day is Tuesdays, so I know that Lab 2909 will always be available for me on Tuesdays. There are about 15 weeks out of our 18-week semester in which we can use the language lab, and the goal is to go once a week. Of the 14 teacher surveys, 4 teachers said that they went 1 time during a semester on average. 1 teacher said that she went 5 times. 1 teacher said she went 6 times. 1 teacher went 10 times. 3 teachers went 12 times. 1 teacher went 15 times. 2 teachers went 18 times. And 1 teacher went 48 times. So even though we have scheduled lab times, it is possible to ask other teachers to switch with you. With each scheduled lab time, a teacher has a 49-minute period to use the language lab. This is an approximate amount of time of a class period. These are the length of class periods at Lambert. Fortunately, all of the teachers responded that when they used the language lab, they did stay for at least 10 minutes. 5 teachers said that they stayed longer than 40 minutes, meaning they stayed the entire class period. 2 teachers said that they stayed approximately 40 minutes. 3 teachers said they stayed about 30 minutes when they used the language lab, and 4 teachers stated that they stayed in the language lab for 20 minutes. I also wanted to know what types of language lab activities teachers preferred. Again, teachers could say that they used the language lab for more than one type of activity. 8 of the 14 teachers said that they used the language lab for recorded speaking assessments, meaning that if they had a spoken assessment of student speech, they would have students go into the lab and record their response to a prompt. 1 teacher said that she used the language lab for museum activities, meaning that she had students do practice recordings and then they listened to other people's recordings and finally their own, with the goal of self-evaluation to see where one fits in with one's peers. 8 teachers said that they used the language lab for rotating partner practice with spoken language, meaning that they had students speak to various members of the class throughout the time spent in the language lab. 4 teachers said that they used the language lab for partner practice, but only with one partner. 7 teachers said that they used the language lab for their students to read aloud from a book or from a passage to each other. And 10 teachers said that they used the lab primarily and preferably for listening practice. The last questions on my initial interest survey were to ask teachers what their unit of study would be during the time period in which I hoped to give them a sample activity for using the language lab for more spoken activities. The questions that I asked were if they were interested in receiving such an activity from me, and if so, I asked them to tell me their vocabulary theme for the unit on which they would be working between January and February of 2017, as well as their grammar focus and their end-of-unit goal, since the lab activity that I would develop would be different if it were for a spoken assessment instead of a written assessment. Once teachers told me they were interested in participating, I corresponded with them about which type of activity they would prefer. Their options were paired vocabulary practice, in which I would have a PowerPoint with a question and answer, and students would work in pairs with blanks missing for vocabulary that they could fill in. This would be done early in a unit. Another option was a peer dictation, which would be a story or where one partner has half the story and the other partner has the other half, so they have to say it out loud to each other. Another option was a peer interview, in which they had a series of questions and they would speak to multiple partners and ask and answer. And the final option was a museum activity. So they would have a prompt that the teacher could choose. The students would have a few minutes to think of what they would say, then record the response, and listen to various members of their class, and then finally return to their own station to listen to their own recording and evaluate their own speech. Unfortunately, though I had 14 original participants, only 5 of those people were able to complete my capstone. This was due primarily to changes in Language Lab software over our winter break of 2016 to 2017. At each school, one lab had new software. Unfortunately, training was limited for this, and many of the schools had difficulties. This discouraged teachers from using the Language Lab, as they told me via email that they regretted to inform me that they could no longer participate in my survey. Of the 5 people who participated, 3 of those participants used museum activities. Again, the activity where they have students record a response and then listen to other students and finally evaluate their own speech. 2 of the teachers, or 40%, had the paired vocabulary activity with guided questions. This also meant that students would rotate through various partners while completing the activity. I asked the participating teachers to tell me how the students reacted to doing this activity that I had shared with them for the Language Lab. 2 of my favorite quotes, one that was rather positive, is at the top. The students loved using the headsets during this activity. I felt that student participation was vastly improved compared to the same type of activity in the classroom. That would be without the headset. Of these comments, the only somewhat negative comment is at the end, in which the teacher says that the students were nervous to have their peers listening to the recording. I also appreciated the quote in the middle. Since the students were actively involved, many of them showed great critical thinking about vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation in the target language. They showed the ability to self-correct and offer peer feedback. They worked well together. I like this theme that students felt less intimidated by using the headsets than they would in the classroom where more people would be able to overhear them, in addition to the fact that teachers are able to monitor more closely. From these responses, I conclude that more training is necessary at the district level. It seems to me that teachers want to use the Language Lab for activities like this, but the change in technology came at a difficult time with my survey. And also, if teachers know how to create these materials and how much fun and how much engagement they can see with their students, they might be more inclined to use them. In addition to having training at our district collaboration days, which occur multiple times throughout the year on professional development days, I think training for new hires would be helpful. I would like to thank my mentor through this process, Angela Burgess. I would also like to thank our new district coordinator, Michaela Klausnix, who is doing a wonderful job. Thank you for your time and for your consideration.